Good morning, everyone. What I want to look at this morning is the whole idea of skills, and we're going to look at benchmarking those skills. We're going to move on then to the home economics process, because there is a home economics process. We're going to look at how we can deliver this process through home economics, and then I'm going to conclude with looking at the skills that are required for assessment. All of this in preparation for moving students through into Key Stage 3. So, in terms of looking at benchmarking skills, what is there out there in terms of giving us a target, a point of reference as to what we should be aiming for with our young people? In 2007, the British Nutrition Foundation were commissioned by the Food Standards Agency to create a progressive framework which would inform and guide nutrition education. And as a result, they produced this range of core food competencies. They are aimed at young people between the ages of 7 and 16, and they focused at that stage on three main areas. They were diet and health, consumer awareness, and cooking and food safety. So those have been out there. Now you can see clearly that by the age of 7, we're looking for young people to be able to, with help, prepare a range of healthy dishes and drinks safely and hygienically. By the age of 11, you can see what we're asking them to do here. Know how to store, prepare and cook a variety of predominantly savoury dishes safely and hygienically, through then to age 14, which is the end of Key Stage 3. Then also moving on at age 16. So there are 4 distinct phases then which we have benchmarked the skills, or the skills have been benchmarked. These have been under review, and the consultation for those core food competencies actually closed last week. So they're being reviewed, and they have also now within the review included physical activity as an additional 4th area. But that's obviously here within the UK. If we look beyond that at what is out there in Europe, there is actually a European food framework, and this then focuses taking it back to young people from an age of 5 through to 16. And they have 3 main areas there, which would be diet, active lifestyle and energy balance. And it's to outline the core knowledge and skills that they feel that the young people then across Europe should have, looking obviously at those 3 main areas. And this framework, and I've also included up here, obviously you can see the web link to it. This is a framework which can be used in 3 main ways. First of all, as an audit tool in schools, as the benchmark to see where you're at. And it can be used obviously if you're developing schemes of work and the lesson plans that are going to flow from that. It can be used as a support document for any sort of curriculum development that you want to do. And obviously it's there as a guide for anybody who would be wanting to develop resources for young people. So it's creating that framework around which we can all work. Safe Food has quite recently carried out a consultation with stakeholders as well, looking at the food skills across the province. And looking at food, and I know I'm talking about home economics, but food in particular is the only subject that I know of where such a coordinated approach is being taken on such a large scale. And you can see clearly here the fact it is on a European scale. And obviously it is starting now to recognise the importance of healthy eating and ensuring that we create those healthy lives for our young people in the future. So we've got our benchmarks as to where we want to be. So moving on then, and here comes the education part. Some of you, no doubt, will recognise this particular model, so bear with me while we revisit something that you perhaps haven't seen for many a year, but it actually underpins all that we've done. I'll put you out of your misery. This is Bloom's taxonomy, okay, created by Benjamin Bloom way back in 1956. I know I'm not that old, but 1956 was whenever he sat as the chairman of an education committee, and obviously that's who it's named after, whenever he produced his taxonomy of educational objectives. Now there are other taxonomies out there, but this is the one that I want to focus on this morning. So it's actually moving thinking from this lower order, from remembering, right the way through to the higher order skills of creating. Now for those of you who are of a similar vintage to myself, and there's not that many here, but you will remember that creating wasn't always at the top of the pyramid. It was actually evaluating was at the top of the pyramid. One of Bloom's students who then took on to review it, and that's how we now have creating at the top of the pyramid. But it actually looks at three domains, three cognitive domains. They would be the cognitive area, where we know with our head, so I know. Where the affective domain, where we feel, in other words, I think. And also the psychomotor, where I can do, and that's obviously the whole area of working with your hands and the actual doing of it. But remembering is the whole idea of around, if you think about the command words that we would use, things such as name, list, identify, define, outline, those straightforward, what I call recall questions or activities, through to understanding, which would be the whole idea around describe, discuss, explain. And to be honest, that's where a large number of our young people would be. And I sometimes wonder if that's, whenever we are developing skills in our young people, if that's where our teaching would all lie within the whole idea of remembering and understanding. But we want to be able to be getting them up to this area where you're looking at evaluating, assess, justify, recommend, rate, decide and choose. Those are all decision-making processes. And if we apply that then to what we have over here, which are actually the assessment objectives for the GCSE Home Economics Specification, and where that's concerned, this would be the framework. We're talking about frameworks. This would be the framework around which any assessment that's being done at GCSE, and it's a similar framework for A-level, around which any of the assessment processes then would be based. And there are three assessment objectives here. This one, obviously, AO1, very simple, straightforward, recall, select, communicate. AO2, where you're asking them to apply their skills and knowledge. And AO3, where they are then analysing. So you can see where already there is a correlation between the creation and the evaluation in AO3, coming down then to analysing and applying in AO2, and then obviously understanding and remembering in AO1. So it is all starting to connect, and the linkages then obviously are there. So that's putting aside, or that's setting the context then for the educational aspect of it. But we do have a home economics process. And this has been there since for as long as I can remember. And this is what we are obviously bringing forward to assess whenever we come to GCSE. But it should be underpinning the work that we're doing at Key Stage 3. So whether you are preparing young people to go into GCSE or whether you're coming into schools to present demonstrations or whatever it should be, there will be aspects of this which will apply to us all. So in terms of the process, there are three, as it were, bullet points attached to it. The first one would be task analysis. And that's where you're actually starting to remember. And if you apologise for the upside down, as it were, icon, but it's actually to show you the linkages. And task analysis would actually correlate across to remembering. So what can you remember about a particular topic? The research obviously moves it a little bit further because we're moving then into remembering and understanding, and all the while building on those foundations that we have through the actual teaching. Results then will be where we're moving from applying the skills through to analysing and evaluating. The whole idea of making conclusions and drawing decisions, or making those decisions and drawing conclusions. And then evaluation, and that can be evaluation in terms of looking at information, sources, evidence, and then making reasoned judgments. And then obviously I've put creating at the end here the practical outcomes in terms of what we're actually going to do within the classroom. So in delivering home economics, what should we also be looking for? I'm standing here juggling a microphone and technology, but along with Bloom's taxonomy, a framework and all the rest of it you're having to juggle within the classroom, there are lots of other things that we try to do to encourage home economics. We want to make sure that there is a use of a variety of teaching styles, teaching and learning styles in particular, from the visual through to the kinesthetic, to make sure that we all come with our own particular learning style and that's being addressed. The use of the active learning methodologies. Home economics is an active subject. Okay? You all, those of you who are there day and daily in the classroom, know that break is something that happens in between two classes that are coming and going. Lunch, if you're lucky, and so on. It's a very active subject where you're constantly on the go. And I'll talk a little bit more about active learning methodologies in a moment. We want to create the opportunities for what I call connected and thematic learning, not a silo approach, that they can quite clearly see where the linkages are. We want to develop the thinking skills and personal capabilities which underpin all of Key Stage 3, particularly the whole idea of decision making, organising, self, and the whole thing about time management. Obviously, challenging attitudes and dispositions. Our young people come to us at 11 years of age in post-primary school. They have already established certain attitudes towards foods. And it's the opportunity within home economics then to bring that challenge to them. And obviously develop those skills which they can then transfer through and be relevant to the world of work. Obviously you know what those are in terms of maths, communication and ICT. So, how can we apply this? I'm going to concentrate on eggs. All right. What do we know about eggs? We consume over 11 billion eggs every year. It takes a hen 24 to 26 hours to lay an egg, and then she starts all over again half an hour later. And an average hen lays approximately something between 300 and 325 eggs per year. It is worth somewhere in the region of £957 million to the food industry in terms of to our economy. So you can see, obviously, it might be small, might be fragile, but very important. So let's look at task analysis. So if you were to sit down and to say, this is not an exhaustive list by no means, it's just ideas put onto a page. But you can see here, obviously, if we take eggs as being the central theme, what can we do with them, or what do we want to look at in the task analysis? Obviously, we want to look to see why would we be eating them, why should they be included within the diet? It's all right, told you the technology. We obviously want to be able to cook with eggs. We want to look at how eggs affect some people in terms of food intolerance and allergies. We can carry out various sensory analysis tests. We'll talk about that in a moment. Pardon me. And then eggs, I don't know about you, but eggs to me also mean Easter. Eggs in terms of spring, new life and all the rest of it. So, as I say, you could take that and obviously apply it through a mind map and obviously tease it out much further, and also the whole idea of creating a concept map and working out the concepts that you want to get across. So, following on from that, any of these points would allow you then to go through the second element within the home economics process, which is the whole idea of research. As I said, nutrition and eggs. You'll be able to find further information there on the BNF website, ages and stages through FSA. Food intolerance and allergies, obviously looking at not only eggs but other foods that would create problems within any disorders. Again, BNF have a really good articles on those. Easter celebrations around the world. In Ireland, believe it or not, there are some places where they actually hold a mock funeral for a herring on Easter Sunday to show the end of Lent. If you're in Florence, they will be parading through the town on Easter Sunday. They will take a cart and they will explode it to help ensure that there's going to be a good harvest. So there's lots of things that you can do there to create that sort of stimulus. And remember, the young people that we have sitting in front of us all come from a wide and varied range of cultural backgrounds, so they have a lot to be able to contribute here. The whole idea around the importance of family meals and those family celebrations coming up to Christmas, the whole idea of the different types of foods that we eat at Christmas, eat at Easter, from hot cross buns, and if you're Polish, you're actually on Holy Thursday going to start and make a cake which is actually going to be moulded in the shape of a lamb. And this lamb cake is the central part of their meal whenever it comes on Easter Sunday. So again, there's lots of richness in terms of what young people can bring to your whole classroom. The whole idea of chocolate, my favourite subject. Chocolate and the nutrition that it brings, believe it or not, and obviously how it can be used in cooking. And then the whole idea around fair trade, organic foods, free range versus caged hens. Lots of ideas then that can obviously be used for further research. This is one. I wake up and smell the chocolate. I've given you the link there because this article is on our website, and it could actually be used as part of the ICT accreditation. It could be used in terms of labelling, fair trade. We're actually coming tomorrow to the end of Fair Trade Fortnight. And again, in terms of literacy, where you can get them to use their persuasive skills in writing, perhaps to tell some others about what you have discovered in your research about fair trade and how they could possibly take action from it. As I say, it's showing the connections, not just simply teaching things in isolation. Obviously, labelling comes into it whenever we're looking at fair trade, and that takes us one step further. Whenever we would come up to the likes of free range versus caged hens. The egg box, looking at it and its labelling, what does the British Landmark stand for in terms of the Lion Code of Practice? Where, for example, do they know that if it has the Lion Code of Practice on it, that the hens have actually been vaccinated against salmonella? Obviously, the whole idea of when you go to choose your eggs in your local supermarket, do you take into account where they're actually coming from? It allows them then to get viewpoints, because there are lots of articles actually on the web, particularly newspaper articles, which they will give both sides of the argument, and looking at how, from, as it were, farm to fork, our animals are then being reared. Another one, handling data. As I said, Easter eggs, bring in the whole consumer awareness aspect of it. Are they value for money? It allows them then to use their numeracy. Allow them to decide on the criteria to be used. There are lots of them in the supermarket. I walked into one on Thursday evening. If you buy 2, you'll get 2 free. So in terms of value for money, are they good value? I've just put up a few ideas there in terms of which particular shop, the weight, the percentage of cocoa, the price and any extras that come with it. And allow them then to collect data. It's meaningful data to them. They're able to discuss the results. It doesn't have to be masses and masses of words, but as long as they're actually taking part in this discussion, again, good skills which are coming through then for GCSE. They're able to draw conclusions, and they're able then, from that then, to make decisions based on value for money. They will, of course, have seen the likes of the witch logos that come out on various products, and it allows them then, as it were, to award their own particular value for money on their own particular Easter eggs that they've looked at. Next one, sensory analysis. It was Pancake Tuesday, quite recently. Another opportunity for looking at sensory analysis where they could have taken a pancake mix, they could have bought some from a shop, and they could have made their own with their own recipe. And again, getting them to decide what the criteria would be. Meat and Education actually have a very good little game, drop and drag as it were, where they can take descriptors. So often whenever you're looking at descriptors that the young people are going to use, everything's nice, or it's okay. Very limiting in terms of what you're actually getting from the data or from the sensory analysis. So have a look at the Meat and Education site, and you'll see there that they have a very good activity which they can use and use online. The whole idea of meal planning. I'm sure we've all had loads of these put through our letterbox, and we just simply put them into the paper bin and we don't use them. These are actually another source. in terms of ideas where you can use them for meal planning, give them perhaps eggs as one of the ingredients, and see what they can, using one of the supermarket leaflets, what they can actually build around it to make a meal. The whole idea of cooking on a budget, where they can take those leaflets again, or where they can go online, and you can perhaps then move the whole thing up a stage in terms of looking at application. Put it into a context, put it into a family situation where perhaps someone has a particular dietary disorder which you're having to cope with within the meal planning. So again, different skills which can be used then, obviously, again, with perhaps eggs as their theme. So that's really research and viewpoints, and moving on then to the likes of evaluation. Now this would be what teachers would say, Glynis, they can't do this, okay? They just can't do it. They are doing it in primary schools. On our website, I've given you the link there, we have 83 pages worth of active learning and teaching methodologies. Here's one, for example, what I call the priority pyramids. And after you have perhaps provided them with the information in a fact sheet or whatever, that you get them then in the pyramid. You can make as many sections within the pyramid that you want to come up with maybe the top 5, 7, 9 facts that you feel, or they feel, are the most important. Because if they feel they're the most important, and you obviously want them to make sure they're the right ones, they'll remember them better. And also the fact then that they put the top one, the best fact, at the top of the pyramid. The next one then would be speech bubbles. One thing I have learnt today, and I have used it in conferences at the end of a training session where I've actually said to everybody, okay, give me one thing that you've learnt here today. I call it the 6 o'clock moment. Whenever they're sitting at the table and they say, well, what did you do in home economics today? What did you learn today? So you want to make sure that you're showing them exactly what they have actually learnt today. Plus, minus, and what next obviously looks at where they perhaps had a particular stance on something, looking at the 360 views on it all, and then coming up with what they feel is perhaps even a different approach. Moving on, food skills. Food skills obviously is what we're all involved in, and you can see here are some of the ideas that you can use with eggs. Not to go into them all, but you can also see where I have just very quickly listed down the various actual food skills that would come from that. But what we have to try and do is move those skills on. Take a recipe, for example. Whenever they move out of school and get a recipe book, it's not going to come with an equipment list. So give them the recipe and see, can they actually start to work out what's the equipment that I'm going to need from it. The creative use of ingredients. Give them the freedom in their Spanish omelette to decide what else they want to put into it. Reorder and sequence, obviously, time plans, be it as simple as scrambled egg or whatever it happens to be, so that it's all jumbled up, and see if they can actually work out the order. And then what I call food in a bag, where you give them a shopping bag. It can actually be the real ingredients, or it can be just pictures of ingredients, and they then have to make a dish, whatever, from it. At the moment, we are teaching food skills in what I call a linear approach. In other words, they start with a recipe and they move down through it. What we also need to do is to create the abstract in terms of, I open my fridge door on a Thursday or a Friday evening, what am I going to make from this? The other thing as well is, I have got a tomato sauce, I know I can make a tomato sauce, what can I make from that? Can I add mince and make chilli, spaghetti bolognese, lasagna, whatever it happens to be. There are lots, as I say, of resources available, be it on Food Effective Life. I think this should be in your pack. This is also a type of evaluation form that you can use in terms of what they have learnt in class. Connections across the curriculum, as I have said, obviously shouldn't stand on its own. Science in terms of eggs, reproduction, the animals that produce eggs. History, the historical events that take place at Easter. Art, really good idea, where you can get them actually to draw the nutrients onto eggs. Okay, an idea that you could actually try in class, where they can perhaps paint one egg as fat, another egg as calcium, and so on, another egg, and so on after that. Assessment in Key Stage 3, and I'm moving very quickly to the end here. In terms of assessment, it's another skill which has to be developed. Assessment should be planned. Whenever you're planning what the topic is going to be, or the connected theme, or whatever, it has to be, as I've said here, built in, not bolted on. Okay? So it shouldn't be something which somebody decided, all right, I'll give them a test on this. The test should be at the point whenever you are planning what it is that you're going to do. There has to be a variety of activities and opportunities. You're all into data tracking. You all have your milestones that you have to meet throughout the academic year. So make sure that there is that variety there. There has to be the incline and difficulty. I showed you the AO1, 2 and 3. Your test and assessment must reflect that as well. And it should include extended writing right from year 8 in their assessment, so that they get used to the mechanics. So often they use a QWERTY keyboard. They could tell you in the dark, how to get around it. But they have to get used to the mechanics of writing within an assessment situation. You have to then provide them with a range of mark tariffs, from single mark questions right the way through to those questions which may carry more marks. But what you need to be clear about is, how am I going to award those marks? If I'm going to give them 1 mark, what is it going to be 1 mark for? Similarly, if I'm going to give them 3 marks for a question, how is that going to be broken down? And finally, the mark scheme must be written at the same time with the paper. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're using the same assessment tool across a particular year group. I used to work by an old adage that said, teach to the highest and scaffold the lowest. So it may be that you use the same tool, but it may have to be diluted in some way, or the language perhaps made more accessible for the lower ability students. I've shown you where within the Key Stage 3 Home Economics programme, all of the areas I've discussed then will come through. Rather than taking each of them as an individual point, it's much more connected and showing you the links. Finally, that old Chinese proverb, which, going back to what I was saying about blooms, tell me and I'll forget, show me and I remember, involve me and I will understand, step back and I will act. I know that Easter is fast approaching. I know that you have coursework to mark. It's that time of the year, and I wish you all a happy Easter.